Today we're talking about introverted feeling, continuing the series of videos that I made about the cognitive functions as explained by Carl Jung in his book Psychological Types. We basically discussed so far about extroverted thinking, extroverted feeling, and introverted thinking. And today we're moving on to the last rational function or judgment function, as Jung called it, namely introverted feeling. So all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So similarly to how I dealt with this in the previous videos, I will be talking about introverted feeling by using quotes from Carl Jung's Psychological Types. I will be reading certain parts of it, and then I will be also giving my interpretations and my thoughts on it, okay? So basically introverted feeling, in the opinion or characterization of Carl Jung, is very much related to extroverted feeling in the sense that they both stem from the same source, the feeling function. However, what makes them very different from each other is the orientation or the attitude. So in the case of extroverted feeling, the extroverted orientation makes it much more likely to care about the feeling aspect of other people, of the society, of the group, and so on and so forth. Whereas for introverted feeling, it is much more about the subject, so about the person that is basically involved in that process. And Jung said as follows: introverted feeling is determined principally by the subjective factor. This means that the feeling judgment differs quite as essentially from extroverted feeling as does the introversion of thinking from extroversion. It is unquestionably difficult to give an intellectual presentation of the introverted feeling process, or even an approximate description of it, although the peculiar character of this kind of feeling simply stands out as soon as one becomes aware of it all. It is a feeling which apparently depreciates the object. Hence, it usually becomes noticeable in its negative manifestations. The existence of a positive feeling can be inferred only indirectly, as it were. Its aim is not so much to accommodate to the objective fact as to stand above it, since its whole unconscious effort is to give reality to the underlying images. So basically in this description, Carl Jung is highlighting the fact that introverted feeling is primarily concerned with the self, with what the subject feels and values on a personal subjective level, and everything that is outside of the subject, this is what Jung calls the object. It could be other people, other situations, specific circumstances, and so on and so forth, is considered to be of less relevance. And this is not to say that the introverted feeling types, specifically ISFPs and INFPs, do not care about other people or do not care about external circumstances. They do, very much. But what their consciousness values more, what their consciousness prioritizes, is how these things relate to the subjective emotional experience of the self. Next, I really like this quote that Jung had here. Continually emancipating itself from the relation to the object, this feeling creates a freedom, both of action and of conscience, that is only answerable to the subject, and that may even renounce all traditional values. And I like how he points out the fact that this type of feeling kind of separates the person from everything that seems to be imposed. While extroverted feeling is much more likely to give in to what other people want because it goes out of its way to create that harmony in groups, introverted feeling tends to kind of operate against it and is much more likely to focus on things that matter to the self, that are valuable to the self. And in this way it creates freedom because it distances itself from all of those other external things, what other people say or what the situations look like or whatever that might be. So again, it's not that they don't care about other people or they don't care about what other people value or feel. They might still go for harmony in some situations, but their consciousness will always prioritize what they value themselves, and that helps them create that freedom. Similarly to how introverted thinking creates freedom through its own logic, introverted feeling creates freedom through its own personal values. Okay? And then Jung goes deeper to talk about the introverted feeling type. So here he means the dominant introverted feelers, ISFPs and INFPs. And he says, It is principally among women that I have found the priority of introverted feeling. The proverb, "still waters run deep," is very true of such women. They are mostly silent, inaccessible, and hard to understand. Often they hide behind a childish or banal mask, and not infrequently their temperament is melancholic. So he points out, as it is the case with extroverted feeling, that these types are more frequently women than men, that the feeling function in a dominant position or a leading position is more frequently found among females, and that a distinct characteristics that it has is that they tend to go very deep with these emotions. They are not necessarily the most emotionally expressive, but they tend to focus on those feelings that they have or those values that they have and really, really go deep with them, get very profound about them, experience them on a very, very deep level in the emotional sense. Next, I really like how Jung describes the idea that her feelings are intensive rather than extensive. So again, he highlights the idea that similarly to introverted thinking, introverted feeling will prefer going in depth with those feelings, maybe to focus on less, but to aim to get the depth rather than a wider array of things. And this is something that applies quite well to the thinking function, what I mentioned in my previous video, TE versus TI. The same principle applies here, FE versus FI. And FI will go much deeper with the experience of a certain emotion. And that might not come out as distinctly to the external world. Other people might perceive it to be unclear or weird or too melancholic or too sad, etc., etc. But to those that might be closer to the introverted feeling type, this depth of emotion and processing of the personal values will definitely stand out. And this is a point where I would say FE and FI differ quite distinctly, in the sense that FE will kind of take the emotion and explore it into multiple different contexts or scenarios. It will look for harmony, it will look for social norms and rules. Whereas introverted feeling, again, will find that freedom for itself, for what it really means to the self. Right, so these are my thoughts on introverted feeling as described by Carl Jung in Psychological Types. This is my analysis, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts about it. Is there anything else you would add? Is there anything else that, I don't know, maybe is unclear to you? I'm really curious to learn about that below. And again, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. In the next few weeks, I will also be discussing about the other 4 functions, the 2 intuitive functions and the 2 sensing functions. And we will be looking at how Carl Jung described them in order to later understand this.